So how much water does your garden need? The answer to this question is quite simple. An inch of rainfall doesn't sound like much, but over an area of say 200 square feet, it's an equivalent amount of water of about 125 gallons, which is a lot of water. How much does your garden require to use? Well, every 5 gallons spread over 8 square feet would be adequate. Now, not to confuse you, but due to gravity, water has a tendency to flow downwards into the soil, which is good. The better the soil structure, the easier it will be for the water to move through that soil. Heavy clays have tiny particles, which means that basically water can sit on the top and not get down to the roots. Sandy soils tend to lose water rapidly because the water tends to flow through them. So a mixture of good soil can be the answer, first of all, for minimising the amount of water you use. Example, let's say you've got a sandy soil. What you do is you put in some good, cow shit is one good thing, mulch, compost, mushroom compost, whatever you can, and mix it all in with the soil first of all. So you end up with a better friable soil to work with. Water in its own essence only does the job if it can get to the roots of the plant. If the water is sitting close to the top, well, that's where your roots will be, and they'll be basically subjected to any sort of wind. They're not anchored well into the ground, and they can basically die and dry out very quickly. So the secret is organic matter in sandy soils in particular, and in clay soils. You need to break the soil down to be friable. When you pick up a handful of soil and you squeeze it, it shouldn't stay together completely. It should just gently fall apart when you shake your hand. If it doesn't, there's too much clay in the soil. So the answer is simply to mix your soil in with organic matter to give it a better way to retain water, and deeper the better. In other words, if your soil is well balanced, about a foot down, you're going to have roots that go down deep. When it comes down to things like your vegetable garden, I'm sure most of you know vegetables are made up of about 90% water, and so they require a significant amount of water to grow. Quite astonishing sometimes. If you've got a 200 square foot garden, which is 20 by 10 feet, you're going to need about 125 gallons of water per week. That sounds like an extraordinary amount of water, but that is even what they use commercially to grow plants. So the answer is quite simply to design a garden that meets your requirements. If there's 2 of you, or there's 4 of you, or there's 10 of you, well, comparatively, you're going to need a lot more water for a lot more garden. But if you can balance it, basically you water in the morning very early if you can, before the sun rises, whether you've got a timer or whether you get up and do it yourself. It means you'll be able to put the water in deep. It will stay moist. It'll go deeper into the soil, meaning the roots will search for that water. And the secret with deep watering once or twice a week is after those days where the water is not being watered, the roots will search down deeper and deeper, meaning that the plant will have a better anchor basis to work from. So how much water do you need for a normal garden? Well, you need quite a lot. Like I say, 20 foot by 10 foot is 200 square feet. It's about 125 gallons of water a week. So people think they can have a 40-gallon drum and that should do it. It won't. You need a lot more water, whether you get it from an aquifer, or whether you pump it from a river, or you might even have a spring. But there's no point starting a garden unless you're willing to have the amount of water that is required to feed it. Of course, it rains, and that's the best water you will ever find. So when it rains, you cut back on your watering. But the most crucial times for watering are pretty simple. It's when you have seedlings in the ground. They need to be kept moist, not flooded, but moist. And near the end of harvest, to give you an example, like watermelons, tomatoes, anything that needs moisture at the end to fill up the fruit, you need to increase the water. Not too much, because if you do too much watering, things like watermelons and tomatoes in particular will split. You can still eat them, but you see my point. It's a balancing act, but it all boils down to your soil. The better friable soil you have with good organic matter in it makes life a lot easier for your plants, which means you get a better reward with a better harvest. It's probably been boring for most people, but for some it may be interesting. And if you have been listening, thank you.